In 2025, one F1 fantasy player outscored over 2.7 million teams to finish third in the world. His name is Alex Pearson from the UK, and today we're breaking down exactly how he built a global league podium season and what you can steal from his strategy in 2026. Also, if you want to stay one step ahead of the competition, make sure you subscribe and consider becoming a member of our channel. Members get early access to every video, and this year we're starting a members-only fantasy league with great prizes. All right, let's dive in. The first tip is starting strong. Alex started the season with a bold move, a Tier B constructor in Williams for the Australian Grand Prix. Why Williams? Alex told me he saw encouraging pace in the preseason testing in Bahrain, and Carlos Sainz looked strong again in free practice in Australia. He felt the upside was real and not just short-term noise. He also had doubts about the other Tier A constructors. He already had McLaren on his team, Mercedes had some risk with Kimi Antonelli making his F1 debut on a wet weekend, and Red Bull had some early reliability concerns with Liam Lawson's car. So instead of locking in a second Tier A constructor, he spread his budget across his drivers. Alex ended up picking Lando Norris as his 2x DRS boost, Nico Hulkenberg as a wet weather specialist, and both Haas drivers, who traditionally lead the grid in overtakes. The result? 209 fantasy points in round 1. A massive start and a foundation for everything that followed. The second tip is consistency and discipline. By Imola, Alex was already inside the top 100 of the global league. But his focus wasn't just on scoring points. He explained to me that he built a hybrid approach, and he did a few things here. He built his budget early. He stayed competitive on points each and every race, and he worked toward a long-term 4A structure, which is 2 Tier A drivers and 2 Tier A constructors, so he has a lineup with 4 high-scoring upside assets. Once Alex understood the pricing model, he selected drivers most likely to gain value. Now you can do this too by using the budget builder from f1fantasytools.com and the analysis we share right here on the fantasy formula every race week. Over time, that compounding budget growth mattered far more than chasing a few extra points per race. He did all this while staying inside the free transfer limit most weekends. He only took a -10 transfer penalty twice all season. He followed 2 strict rules. The first was protecting the long-term structure of his lineup, and the second was never chasing short-term points. That discipline kept his team stable, his budget growing, and he avoided unnecessary penalties that would cost him points. The third tip is differential masterstrokes. Alex didn't just rely on models and betting lines to select his team. He balanced data with historical performance, circuit characteristics, and what he was seeing in practice. Here's how he picked a few of his biggest differential calls. First is Lance Stroll, who he selected at Belgium, Hungary, and Zandvoort. He targeted mixed condition races and trusted Stroll's wet weather skill, something he said was very undervalued. Stroll averaged 14.3 points in these races, which is 8 points higher than his season average. The second is Ferrari over Mercedes at Monaco, Silverstone, and Belgium. While most players stuck with Mercedes, he pivoted to Ferrari. Ferrari outscored Mercedes by 116 fantasy points across these 3 races. So what inspired him to make the switch? He aimed for constructors that had both drivers in form. Red Bull wasn't getting consistent performances out of Yuki Tsunoda. Meanwhile, Kimi Antonelli had a dip in his form during the European leg of the calendar, so the Mercedes constructor also became dependent on a single driver. Ferrari was the only team besides McLaren with 2 drivers at the top of the grid, and the timing of that switch made a huge difference. The third big play he made was Charles Leclerc at Mexico. In Mexico, Alex picked Charles Leclerc because he trusted historical circuit performance over recent form. Leclerc scored 29 fantasy points, beating Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, and George Russell, who were selected on far more teams. And lastly, he had Kimi Antonelli at Brazil. So after Antonelli qualified on the front row at the sprint, Alex leaned into Mercedes' strong history at Interlagos. He followed every session, listened to interviews from Kimi and the team, and the evidence all suggested that Antonelli's pace was for real. Kimi delivered a season-high 40 fantasy points and launched Alex into global league contention. The last tip is elite chip timing. By patiently building his budget all season, Alex unlocked massive upside late in the year, when some chips are most powerful. Let's walk through his key plays. The first was Final Fix at Baku. Oscar Piastri qualified P9 for this race, and while many players stuck with him, Alex didn't. He saw that Baku historically had few overtakes and that Max Verstappen had a dominant history around the streets of Azerbaijan. He used Final Fix to bring in Verstappen, who went on to win the race, while Piastri crashed out in turn 1. That single move led to a 106-point swing and protected his momentum at a critical moment. The next big chip play was the 3x boost at Qatar. Thanks to his budget building, Alex could afford both Verstappen and Piastri, and still squeeze in Carlos Sainz. He deployed the 3x boost on Verstappen with the 2x on Piastri. And the result was 248 points from just his 3x and 2x drivers, 443 total fantasy points, and a season-defining score that launched him firmly into podium contention. His next big chip move was using the autopilot at Abu Dhabi. On track, the title fight was wide open. We were wondering, would Lando cruise to the Drivers' Championship while picking up Driver of the Day and Fastest Lap honors on the way? Or would Max Verstappen run away with another win while Lando played it safe? Alex removed all the guesswork from this by playing autopilot, running Verstappen and Norris, and letting the game automatically double whichever driver scored the most points. Max scored 92 fantasy points with the 2x boost, and Alex closed the season with 277 fantasy points, sealing P3 in the world. But not every chip goes perfectly, and that's okay. At Miami, Alex played limitless, but faced some bad luck in the sprint race. Verstappen and Antonelli, who were both on Alex's team, collided in the pit lane, leaving them both outside the points positions. But even still, Alex came away with 393 fantasy points and a totally fine weekend. But at Spa, he used no negative, expecting rain chaos like we're so used to seeing at these races. But the race was delayed until the weather cleared up and negatives were minimal. The no negative chip only saved him 3 points. So you don't need perfection to reach the podium. You need discipline and planning. And if you want to know the best times to use these chips, make sure you check out our chip guides. These videos break down how each chip works, how the top players in the game used them last season, and the races we think will be most impactful to use them this year. If you want to improve your F1 fantasy game in 2026, steal Alex's blueprint. First, start strong using preseason and free practice data to find the best bargains for Australia. Next, build budget early so you can run powerful lineups later in the season. Third, protect your lineup structure so you don't take unnecessary transfer penalties. Next is pick differentials using history and circuit characteristics to get ahead of the meta lineup. And also save a few chips for when your budget is strongest so you can get more out of the 3x boost and autopilot chips. And lastly, although simulations and betting lines are helpful, make sure you use driver histories and quotes from the paddock for tough decisions. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're looking for more F1 fantasy tips, check out our other guides and tune in every race week for new episodes. And I'll see you in the next one right here on the Fantasy Formula.